Hey everybody, Will, just in time prepping. How is everybody this morning? Okay, we're going to do a little recap before we start the story. So, as we all know that the U.S. is under nuclear attack and all the major cities have been hit by nuclear warheads. We also know that the president that was in office, President Carter, that he gave a speech to the American people to let them know that we were under a nuclear attack. So when he was loaded into his helicopter with his family to be evacuated to NORAD, then his helicopter was shot down, and everyone on board was killed, president included and his family. Then it starts out with Mark Brady from Virginia, and he was telling us about the draft that, had started. They restarted the draft so that they would have enough guys to fight. And if you didn't go when they called your name into the draft, then they would just shoot you. Then it goes into Samantha from Wyoming, and she was telling us that that it had been an EMP or electromagnetic pulse had wiped out a lot of America, and that she was shuffled into another helicopter to escape to NORAD, and her helicopter was shot down by a RPG, a rocket-propelled grenade. So everyone on the helicopter was killed except for her, and as she laid there in the ash of the helicopter, she was wondering if she'd ever be rescued. So when she opened her eyes, she saw this group of people coming up to the helicopter, and she thought, all right, she was going to be medevaced to the nearest hospital. Well, it turned out that the people that were coming up to her, were marauders, and all they wanted was what was in the helicopter and to search the bodies for anything that they could use. Well, when they got up there and found that she was alive, then they grabbed her and they pulled her out of the helicopter by her ankles and proceeded to gang rape her. And then that was the end of that. Then Adrian Mitchell from California started his story, and he said that the bomb hit all over the United States and that people were fleeing underground, and others that were slowly furious men stormed him, and he was blamed. And they blamed him for the war. Well, it comes to find out that Adrian was actually the president's son, and he was working in Operation Greenpeace. So they thought that they had assumed that about 5 million people were killed, and about 2 million others were wounded or exposed, and that the cloud was moving in the westward direction. Anybody that called 911 was being told that the wait time was 2 hours and 15 minutes on the phone, and that St. Louis had an earthquake of 7.7, and the aftershocks were felt as far away as Kansas City and Louisville. Then the story comes to the next section, which is Ken Harrison, and he was in Arizona, and he was saying that the military was hit hard, and that 3 of every 10 were surviving. Most of them were being killed either by individuals in groups or actually their neighbors. And then he was looking for his son, but as he was searching for his son in the rubble, another helicopter went across the sky, and that's where he saw his son was sticking his head out of the helicopter, and right as he saw his son, another RPG hit that helicopter, and it crashed, and everyone on board was killed. Now, that is where we left off, and I started to read chapter 2, and I got to about the first page, and that's where I ended it. So This is where I'm going to start the session out today, the story. And I'm just going to recap it by rereading it so that we're going all the way through the chapter. So let's get started. The name of the chapter is called The Storm Tracker, and it's outside Bonneville, Wyoming. Chapter 2. There's a storm coming. Samantha's tone was low, respectful in the cold Wyoming wind, but it didn't matter. Tell us something we don't know. It's rained every day since you geniuses blew us up, her captor lashed out. Flinching, Samantha ducked her head, dirty blonde curls hiding a pale, bruised face full of loathing. Instead of arguing, she poked at the reluctant fire with her once expensive shoe, observing the creepy darkness of the highway overpass around them. The clinking echo of the heavy chain around her ankle made her quit before Melvin could tell her to. Now was a bad time to draw attention. Samantha had never hated anyone as much as she did the two drunken men sprawled carelessly in a lawn chair behind her. They were warm in their paint-stained overalls and long johns, but she shivered miserably in the same torn, reeking office clothes she'd been taken in. She wanted to be alone inside their rusty van, out of the icy wind and searching for something she could use as a weapon, but the two males liked to wait until she was nearing frostbite before climbing in behind her and taking what they wanted. The wind blew harder, bringing the sounds of dogs yapping incessantly in hunger and thin, distant screams, loud bangs they couldn't identify. Sam tried to huddle inside a ball that would keep it all out. The thought of sex while their bodies rotting in cars around them made her stomach lurch. It was supposed to be Henry's night, the younger of the cruise painting company brothers who were sharing her, but Melvin was making a shot after shot of wild turkey disappear. When he got like this, both Samantha and Henry gave him what he wanted to keep him from getting bent out of shape. Melvin was mean and bitter when he was sober, but he was violent when he was drunk. Instant Dick, she thought, skimming the vague shapes of farmhouses and fields at the other end of the windy overpass. Just add alcohol. Blackness surrounded them in every direction. There wasn't a speck of light except for their tiny fire. Gently touching her swollen lip, Samantha tried not to think about the horrors she couldn't identify through the dark. The two with her were enough. Where are we going to go, Mel? It's all trashed. Melvin took another long swig from the dirty brown bottle, dug at the filthy crotch under his large stomach. Nah, man, not south. We'll stock up and go to Mexico, take over like the A-team. Don't have to go on no boat, do we? Probably. Melvin's voice was distracted. Bloodshot leer on the pale legs showing from beneath Samantha's grimy skirt, staring at his own thumbprint on her calf. Ain't going on no boat, Henry whined, blowing out a hard belch. Melvin gestured toward Sam, his mean smile showing yellow broken teeth. He threw a small rock at her, and both men laughed when she cried out in pain. Knowing the overweight alcoholics were hoping she'd fight, Samantha let her laughter wash over her as she listened to the terribly angry earth around them, resisting the urge to dig at her dirty hair or rub her stinging hip. The two abusive pigs were keeping her captive and passing her like a bottle. Assumed she meant a thunderstorm, but it suggested snow to her, maybe even a blue norther. And about the weather, Samantha was hardly ever wrong. Her prediction had earned her the pass to safety, had given her this hell instead. But she didn't consider trying to tell them again that a storm was coming. The long-haired 30-something-year-old painters like a pinch and a slap and as punishments, and she was already covered in bruises. Keeping her mouth shut was a hard lesson to learn. Get away. Try again, her heart demanded. The wind suddenly blew harder through the Wyoming basin as if to reinforce the thought. Sam shivered. The wounds and the marks from her first attempt had mostly healed, but the damage to her self-respect never would. Not that she had time for something as trivial as that. Only survivors mattered now. The trio tensed at a loud bang echoing from the west, but when a second shot didn't come, the men returned to their bottle, and their slave resumed her desperate plans. She was a fighter. She just needed to stack the battle. Closing her eyes, Samantha inhaled deeply. There would definitely be snow to usher in the new year, and before morning, too. Could it help her? Maybe, if she manipulated things a little. Right now, the two men were drinking heavily, set to stay up late and wake up even later. What would they do upon rising to a foot of snow on the ground? She frowned. They would take away what they had cleared to get this far and return to the other end of the overpass, to the deserted farmhouse they had stayed in last night. The brothers would hole up and wait out the weather. Even though they were only an hour from moving the last of the abandoned vehicles out of their way before they'd be in Bonneville city limits, an ugly place full of dead and the wails of those who would soon follow. The thought of being snowed in with these horny idiots filled her gut with hot fire, and her mind worked on the problem, while her stomach burned. She had always been a plan-ahead person, but who hell could have prepared for this? What she needed was for the heartless drunks to sleep now and get up ready to go on before the snow got bad. It would put them all in the blizzard together and might give her an opportunity to escape. You know how, don't you? She shuddered, drawing a deep breath. Yes, she did, but she didn't want to. Couldn't stand even the thought of being one of those who started it, let alone having to participate or pretend she was willing. What she needed was a weapon. It would be easier to kill them. Sam ached to think of the possible help at the Essex compound being so close and yet so far away. But she would do what she had to. Pop, pop, pop. The sound of engines and tires squealing followed the loud gunshots, echoing from the total darkness to the south. Coming their way? Shit, they're back. Henry, get the fire out. Samantha was already climbing into the van as fast as loudly clicking chain around her ankles would allow, as eager for the tepid warmth as the far hiding place. She slid into the bed at the rear of the van, and they were plunged into darkness when the two men piled in behind her, slamming the door. She didn't struggle when Melvin put her roughly between them. The males cleared tiny circles on the dirty windows. Samantha kept her head down. She would be shoved away if she tried to peer, but she found that she could easily imagine the loud group that was now within at least a half mile of the overpass where they were hiding. There would be only lights at first and gunshots, and then dirty, muddy, rusted-out jeeps and trucks with gun racks. There would be cruel shouts and mean gestures, scared, abused women cowering in the trunks and the floorboards, their futures grim and short. All of it surrounded with dangerous, reckless driving, shooting at anything that caught their attention, and complete disregard for all the death that had already occurred. Danger filled the air as the noises got louder, and barely breathing trio in the van remained still and silent. As the group got closer, slugs began to slam into the overpass. Bullets hit the cars around them and then the van, making Sam bite her wrist to keep from screaming. The gang drove very slowly, it seemed to her, headlights glaring off the dirty windows. None of them budged. They were all glad when the men avoided the jammed-up overpass from Interstate 26, traveling below instead. They seemed to be going directly into Bonneville, where desperate voices on the van CB radio had been calling for help for the last few days, for American assistance. What are they calling for? And what's coming, Sam thought, trying to ignore the hands now roaming her sore body from both sides, are as opposite as they can be. At the last of the engine noises faded, the van began to rock. Gently at first, it soon became violent, and a scream echoed. Full of pain, sound was cut off suddenly, and a light, freezing rain began to fall over the broken land. All right, you guys, that's it for today. As you can see, it's starting to get pretty wound up now. Let's see what happens next week. I will start with a follow-up of what we had read today, and then we will go right into Section 2, Chapter 2. So you guys know, as usual, we have a live stream tomorrow night. It starts at 8 o'clock, and we're going to run till probably around, probably 9 or 10. A couple hours anyway. And you guys know, I can't do any of this stuff without you. You guys mean so much to me. And remember, we have that 2K push. Get your friends to come over. Do a VR, you get 3 chances altogether. So you tell us about 3 channels, and you give us a VR, telling us what you would do in the first 48 hours, 48, maybe 72. I'm still thinking about the story. But be there or be square. 8 o'clock tomorrow night. Remember, I take down the names of everybody there so that we can have that drawing on Saturday. So make sure that you bring your friends with you, because the more people we have, the more fun we can have. Okay, till next time, God bless you. God bless me. God bless the US of A. Till next time.